Hello, everybody. It is Thursday night. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and with me, as always, my co-host in crime, my partner in crime, I guess you call it, Jessie Naylor. This is, like always, on Thursday night, the Hammer and Nayls Show. Hope everybody is doing well out there. Jessie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know what I was thinking about as the intro was playing? How happy I am that Deebo is most likely going to be back with 49ers because I don't want to have to remake that intro again.
Right? It's funny you say that. It's funny you bring up the intro because the Deebo one, that's a really good point because just watching Deebo at practice yesterday, in particular, maybe not so much on Tuesday, but on Wednesday, have a really hard time seeing him not be a member of the 49ers in 2022. And if we take ourselves back even just a month and a half ago, there are people who say the 49ers should just get rid of him if he doesn't want to be here and all that kind of stuff. And so we've seen how that's played out. The other one, though, that's been brought up to me is the pass from Joe Montana that gets caught by Deebo Samuel. If it goes right in line with what our first topic is going to be, because if you notice, if you pay really close attention to that throw, there is a wobble on that ball as it gets to Deebo Samuel.
That's a very good point. That is a very, very good point.
It is wobbling as it gets there. And so that leads us right into Trey Lance. And Trey Lance is, I think it's season 2. He's going to be the guy. Everything points to that. And I've been there, but you've been kind of observing from afar. What have your thoughts been so far, as we get into, I guess finishing up? I don't think we'll see next week's OTA practice come up.
Yeah, So from the outside looking in, the way that I see it is, first of all, I'm excited because you know me. I've always thought Trey Lance is going to be that deal. And he's doing, in my opinion, what he should be doing. This right now, 7-on-7, 11-on-11s with no pads, no helmets. This is when you should look your best, right? And the way that I see it is he's doing exactly what he should be doing. I kind of go back to when he was in college, and a lot of people want to nitpick that he came from a small college and all those things. And my rebuttal to that has always been, what more could he have done? He basically played as perfect as he really could have at that level. He played who was in front of him, and he did an excellent job while doing it. And that's what I feel like he's doing in these practices. Yes, should he look good? Certainly. But he's also doing just that. You've got guys like Zach Wilson, who you're hearing some mixed reviews, right? Coming out of these practices, not looking as accurate as he should. And then you're seeing videos of who a lot of people would believe is a top 5 quarterback in this league, and Deshaun Watson throwing multiple picks during these same exact scenarios. So I don't want to get over the top with it because, again, this is when he should look good. But the fact that he is looking good is also encouraging. And so I'm trying to level set myself from the outside looking in. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation because you're not on the outside. You're there. You're in practice. You're seeing every throw. Numbers are one thing. You can spin numbers however you want. Absolutely. But there's always an eye test. And I don't get to see that thing, right? Like I don't get to give an eye test on this other than a couple videos posted when he's throwing against air, basically. So that being said, from the inside looking at the situation, how do you feel about Trey Lance?
I wrote it last week, and you did, and I know we didn't get to do our show last Thursday because of graduations and stuff that were going on. But I wrote it last week after the OTA practice on Wednesday, I believe it was, about how good he's looked. He's looked every bit the part of the guy that the 49ers traded used 3 first-round picks to draft number 3 last year. He's looked more comfortable at the podium talking to the press, which I know that's not on the field, but that's a big portion of being the leader. And he's been every bit of that. Last year, he was a little bit more robotic. I think that a lot of that was him just trying to get through it because it was all new to him. He did it at North Dakota State, but that's different than the NFL with the number of reporters that are there and so on. But he's looked really good on the field too. If you compare him to like Jimmy Garoppolo, say for example, if I just take a little step back, I didn't see Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. I didn't see any of this portion of the offseason program last year, right? Okay. My first time at practice was I think the second training camp practice, and I saw most of them after that. So I didn't see this portion of it, but what I can say is what I saw of Jimmy Garoppolo last year during training camp is very similar to what I've seen from Trey Lance this year during OTAs. I mean, Lance is putting the ball downfield better than Garoppolo did. He's definitely, getting the shots down the field and so on. He's not throwing as many interceptions. Overall, I think it's been really good. And if you're looking to make a statement about Trey Lance one way or another, I think that it's all arrows up with his performance throughout camp so far.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear. I mean, obviously, everybody can come away from it looking at it a little bit different, but I feel like the consensus really from everybody, I've tried to bounce around and listen to a little bit of everybody's takes that are actually there, and it seems like everybody's got glowing things to say about Trey Lance. And here's the other thing is Trey Lance, just again from the outside looking in, I've got to look at the little things. And so when I look at the press conferences and I listen to the way that the players talk about him and compare that to what we heard, pre-draft, and then when we talked to Coach McAvoy the 3 times that we were able to talk to him, everything's really lining up, Jack. Like, to me, it doesn't seem like anything is out of line from what we thought he was based off of the rumors. And then it's being confirmed with our eyes and our ears right here when he's addressing the media and when the team is addressing the media. And I think those things are important as well.
Yeah, and I'm really looking at getting into training camp and getting into some different of throws that they put them through. They did a little bit of that over the last four practices that the veterans were there that the media got to see. We got to see 5 total, including the rookie minicamp day. But I'm looking forward to seeing how he, doing well and what they've done so far. That's good. They put him in like the red zone situation and 7-on-7 on Tuesday, and he was pretty good at that. And then, so on and so forth. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they work that out. Maybe the move the ball periods and stuff like that will tell us a little bit more about where he is total. But I'm pretty. I would be, I'm pretty bullish on the fact that he's had a good camp. Now, really quick, if you want to play, like I mentioned this to you, this just real quick before we started the show, but if you wanted to play devil's advocate with Trey Lance, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because somebody mentioned this in one of my videos of practice was, how is Trey Lance doing compared to the other quarterbacks? Because we've seen the numbers for Trey Lance, right? The numbers for Trey Lance were 50 of 67, 6 or 7 touchdowns, depending on how you want to judge one of the plays yesterday. I don't know if they gave him a touchdown on it or not. I gave it to him on a nice throw to Ray McLeod over the middle. But he had 5 touchdowns. He had the 2 picks. He was 74.6% throughout the 4 practices that we've seen. The other side of that is the other quarterback, the number 2 quarterback, Nate Sudfeld. He was 38 of 51, 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And he also had a couple of deep throws. And, if you really want to start breaking it down, like, okay, so they got into the red zone period. In the red zone period yesterday, day before, it was Tuesday, Trey Lance had an incompletion on a well-covered throw that he wasn't able to get in there. He had the interception on what should have been a touchdown to Brandon Ayuk. So he was 2 of 4 with a pick and 2 touchdowns in that drill. Sudfeld was 4 of 4 with 4 touchdowns. So when you start to look at the numbers as a whole, that's partly why just seeing the numbers, we joke around about the spreadsheet, and I'll continue to joke around about that. But when you're looking at the numbers, you have to really have the context behind them and what's happening in those situations. Because like I said at the beginning, I feel like Trey Lance has moved forward from where he was a year ago. And I'm very positive on it. But when you look at the quarterback room as a whole, I think that it's not necessarily as bad as maybe we all thought it was, because all the quarterbacks are pretty similar. Purdy was 16 of 25 with 2 touchdowns and a pick.
Okay, so the next question I have is, so again, numbers are one thing, right? And like I said,
Sure.
They can be spun. But the eye test, let's just remove numbers out of it.
Sure.
And this is an honest question because I don't know, right? When you look at Trey Lance play or you look at a Sudfeld or a Purdy play, like is it clear that Trey Lance is he would be the starter of this team? Or if you didn't know anything about these guys, would there be some some gray area there for you?
I think if you just walked in and you just watched him play, you would know that Trey Lance is the starter. Kind of just the way that he carries himself and the way that, some of the plays that he's making, because there are some, like yesterday, for example, the 2 deep throws that he had for touchdowns were, those came on back to back and they were perfect throws. So I think that if I was just showing up and I didn't know anything about the 2, I would think that it was Trey Lance was the better quarterback, and he is. I'm not crazy enough to say that Sudfeld's better. I'm just trying to give you some context of the whole discussion, because it was asked of me from somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to have that context, right? Because again, there are numbers, there are eye tests. It goes back to like Jimmy Garoppolo is a great example. People are like, well, if you look at his numbers, he completed 69% of his passes. And you're like, well, doesn't mean he's necessarily accurate. Do you see the placement of the ball? A lot of these throws, you know what I mean? So, and you can do that with any quarterback, really. I mean, there are quarterbacks that their numbers look lower, but when you watch him play, you're like, well, there was a lot of drop passes. He was very accurate. He had no time to throw. You know what I mean? So you can kind of tell, or they just make throws that you go, oh man, that guy made a throw that this guy couldn't, right? And so I think it is important that, you do break down that Sudfeld and even Purdy are doing well during these drills, kind of going back to my original point, which is this is when they should look their best, right? Like this is tailor-made for quarterbacks to look their best. And so the fact that he is great, but also you can't get over the top with it and be like, oh man, this is the guy. But when you put visuals on it, maybe you can, right?
Yeah, no, you can see like so like for example, yesterday the interception that Lance threw, right? That was a play, he had some pressure from the right side. He stepped up in the pocket. He threw the ball. It was a tight catch, but that was, and I mentioned this in my breakdown show after practice. That was the kind of play where we saw Jimmy Garoppolo throw that ball over the middle a number of times last year to Deebo Samuel, where Deebo Samuel would see it. He'd understand where the guy's coming to get it, and he'd go attack the ball, and he'd make the catch instead of it being a collision or a pick, right? But yesterday, it's not Deebo Samuel, because Deebo Samuel's not practicing. It was, hold on real quick. I'll tell you who it was real quick. It was Keyshawn Johnson. And he's running that route instead. Instead of attacking the ball, he just continues to run across the middle, and he allows O'Neal to beat him to the catch point. And so, again, there's a context thing that goes into it, right? I don't think it was a bad play or decision at all by Lance. I think it's a little, not necessarily the perfect play, not exactly what you want, but at the same time, the receiver needs to be aware enough to be able to help him. And that's partly why Deebo Samuel is going to get paid the big money, this offseason. So just kind of put all those things together. Trey Lance was the best quarterback on the field. I'm just giving you the numbers because it was asked. And I've said it repeatedly throughout camp. I think he's better than he was a year ago. And I think the 49ers are in a really good spot. I'm just hoping that he's more consistent from down to down than what we saw last year, because even when, against Arizona and Houston, it was a little tough, and then he picked it up. So I want to see that consistency. That was what I always I kept telling you about last year, right, during camp, was that Jimmy Garoppolo was just a more consistent guy. Like, he knew what you were getting. And it was even, I don't even know, like, obviously Jimmy Garoppolo threw a number of picks and stuff like that, but you knew what you were going to get. You kind of knew where he was going to go with the ball. And I don't know and that's what Shanahan and Lance have to figure out, so that Shanahan can call a play kind of knowing where that ball is going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you this, and I don't want to take it out of context, tell me if I'm wrong, but hearing what you said even about the 2 interceptions is one, maybe not the best, but at the same time, if that was a receiver that knew what they were doing, they'd probably attack the ball and it wouldn't be an interception. It might be an actual catch. And then 2, the other pick was on Brandon Ayuk. And so that being said, going back to even the college years, and this is one of those things that excites me about Trey Lance, is even though he's got the skill set to do amazing things, he's not going to put the ball in harm's way a ton, right? He's not overly risky. He can make big throws, but he can do it with minimizing some risk, which I think is great that he's continuing that even now in this time of his early stages of his career and early stages of his first year taking over with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the interception to Ayuk. I mean, when he threw that ball, I was like, oh, where's he throwing it? Because it looked like it was tight coverage, and all of a sudden it's on his hands. I mean, he just zipped it right by, it just went right past Holman, and because that was who was in coverage, and it hit him right in the hands. And it just, there was a little bit of hand fighting there, and it just popped out of his hands, and Holman just kept running through the play and was able to, it just bounced to him and he snagged it. But it was a really good throw. When he threw it, I was like, and then he was like, oh, that's going to be a catch. I was like, damn, that's a pretty throw. And then next thing you know, it's not. So that's why when you look at the numbers without the background behind it, they can be skewed in however way you want to do it. So I'm just kind of trying to put that out there. But yeah, no, he looked really good. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's great to hear. I think 49er fans should be obviously jacked about that.
Yeah, no, you should be. If you're a 49ers fan, you should be. There should be more positivity around Trey Lance. We've heard so many things about Trey Lance this offseason, and 90% of it has come from people who haven't laid eyes on any of it. And I think that's been my biggest pet peeve throughout the whole offseason when it comes to Lance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Real quick, I had a super chat. I want to pull us up, and it's going to kind of lead us into our next topic anyway. But 49ers throwback, thank you very much for the super chat and the donation. He says, "Hey Jack, tell me, how's Aaron Banks, Jason Poe, and Spencer Burford doing in camp? How's the running back doing in camp?" So we're going to get to Spencer Burford, and I think when you're talking about the running back, you're asking about Tyrion Davis-Price. So we're going to get to those guys in just a minute, but I will address Aaron Banks and Jason Poe. I don't know if we're going to talk about him because he wasn't a draft pick, but Aaron Banks looks solid. He looks better than he did last year. He's same weight, a little bit thinner, doesn't look a whole lot different, but I guess everything's just kind of distributed differently. But he looks smoother out there. He looks like he's more comfortable and confident with what he's doing. And this is the first time we've really seen him practice since the about 2 or 3 weeks into training camp, since the Kansas City Chiefs game in the playoffs or in the preseason. Yeah. We hadn't really seen him. So he looks good. Jason Poe is a guy who I wasn't impressed with during the rookie minicamp, but I could see growth from him as the OTAs and minicamp came. And that's what you're looking for, right? The day one of minicamp, it was actually day 2, I think, that we were out there. I understand that they're still trying to figure out what they're doing, right? And they're going from playing at Mercer College to now you're with the guys in the NFL, and so you're trying to figure a whole bunch of stuff out. I can kind of get it because I know how I was the first time I went up to Santa Clara for a practice. I walked around like a chicken with my head cut off, just trying to get into the building, and so it's good to see the growth out of Jason Poe. Is he going to make the team? I think it's a long shot that he makes the active roster. I think it might be a long shot for all, but maybe one of the undrafted free agents to make the roster just because it's so deep. But Aaron Banks has looked good. He's going to be your starter at left guard, and Jason Poe has looked good as well. I know it's not a topic of ours, but I'll say of the starting offensive line, 3 of them weren't there. Brunskill, McGlinchey, and Trent Williams, they didn't take any reps. So everybody else kind of moved around. Jalen Moore would move in between guard and tackle and school and so on. And McKivitz, they were moving all around. The 2 guys on the first team that were running with the first team that didn't move their positions at all throughout any of the practices that I saw were Aaron Banks and Jake Brendel. They took every snap at center and left guard. I think that kind of points to the 49ers trying to make sure that those guys get reps in the roles. And even everybody else that they were moving around, I think those are also the guys that they expect to be moving around anyway once all the starters are in camp.
How did Moore look?
He looked really good at guard, and he looked not so good at tackle. He got beat. They just kept getting beat at tackle. He struggles when he's out on the edge, and he was pretty good in at guard, from what I could see with my eyes.
Which is good because that's where they expect him to play. I mean, when he was drafted, that's exactly what Shanahan said. Is he looks at him as a guard. He came in early and played some tackle and had some mixed reviews or whatever, but guard is ultimately, it sounds like, where they want him to be. So at least he's looking good in the position they want him to probably play, right?
Yeah. And that's going to be
him to play.
No, I agree. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out between him and Spencer Burford once they get into training camp. Kyle Shanahan made mention on Tuesday about how, watching the linemen play doesn't really change a whole lot once they put the pads on. And I understand what he's saying, because most of what they do, we think of when they put pads on that they're colliding all the time. And there is a little bit to that, but they really work a lot more with their shoulders and like their hands. Their handwork is what's so important. That's why you can watch offense and defense, like in pass rushing drills, like when they're in team, and you can get a kind of a good idea of who's winning and who's losing, even though they don't have the pads on.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get into these draft picks?
Yeah, real quick. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I think that was the only super chat we had. So thank you very much, 49ers throwback. I appreciate the donation and the question. Fire away, Jesse. You let me have it.
Yeah, so I wanted to get into all the rookies that were drafted, and just quick 2-3 minutes on each one, maybe less, whatever, however you feel about it. But I want to hear a little bit about all of them, and I know that there wasn't a lot of practice for a few of them, but some of these guys, there's just so many players that you're not really hearing a lot about these guys. And I think it's one of these things where we should know how the rookies are looking. Yes, it's their first time with the team, but it is important to see these things. So let's start with the first pick that they had in the draft, which was Drake Jackson. What are your thoughts about Drake Jackson?
Yeah, the thing with Jackson is it's easy to see the athleticism. It jumps off at you when you're there, when they're doing like their individual drills, right? You can see the bend, you can see the explosion off the line of scrimmage into the, depending on what they're doing. Like, he went up against, I don't remember who he went up against, but him and Nick Bosa, I got video of them. Like they weren't doing it at the same time, but it was the drill where they have two linemen and they snap the ball and they tried to see who hits the bag first, the sled first. And he can do that with the best of them. He's explosive. There was, a drill on Tuesday where they've got to do their band and then they run around the hoop and then they knock the ball out of the quarterback's hand and all that kind of stuff. And the first rep he did it, everybody's like, ooh, and Nick Bosa's even clapping for him and everybody else is cheering for him, So that jumps off right away. But then you get into the team drills and it's like, he doesn't, at least what I've seen so far, is it doesn't seem like he really has anything in his bag other than a speed rush. I've kind of focused in on him on a few reps on Tuesday, and he had Sam Schluter, the undrafted free agent tackle from Minnesota, against him, and he just shut him down. I think there was like 4 or 5 reps that I watched, and he didn't even come close to anything. Yesterday was a little bit better. He had the one rep where he forced Lance up into the pocket, and he had another one where he forced him to move and scramble. But other than that, was against, I think on that one, his one really good play yesterday, the 2 times that I've seen him do really good, that goes back to rookie minicamp, were when he faced Alfredo Gutierrez.
Okay.
And that's no offense to Alfredo Gutierrez, but he's not going to be a starting right tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, he's a long shot to have any sort of decent career in the NFL. I get it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to
really quick.
TDP.
Really quick before we get there. I'm not going to pull up the. Oh, here it is. It wasn't too far down. But Andrew says DL is a solid reporter. Come on, that was about my report when I joked about the spreadsheet. Andrew, I wasn't making fun of David Lombardi. I was making fun of his spreadsheet. It had nothing to do with David. David's a good reporter. I don't have any beef with them. I just joke about the spreadsheet. That's it. Just want to make sure I put that out there.
I think everybody jokes about the spreadsheet. I mean, it's funny.
It is funny. I agree.
All right. Rookie running back, Ty Davis Price, TDP. What are your thoughts?
Right. I mean, my thoughts are about the same as yours, because you've seen him about as much as I have. That's where we are with him right now. He was at rookie minicamp. He was at the first week of OTAs. He wasn't there last week, and he didn't practice at all this week. So, of the 5 practices we were able to see, he participated in 2. He's not a guy that's going to show out when it comes to just running around in shirts and shorts, because he's kind of he's a bruiser type of a back. And so I didn't really see anything from him that made me feel any better about the draft pick or any worse. Just, we'll find that out once they get around to training camp, because we just didn't see enough of him.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about another guy then, because we didn't see a lot of Ty Davis Price, like you said, but we did see, or you did see, Mason. How did Mason look? An undrafted guy, right?
Now you're going into my rookie crush, because every time the guy gets the ball, it seems like almost every time he gets the ball, he's electric, right? There was a play on Tuesday where he caught a little swing pass from from Sudfeld in the left flat. The linebacker's just got a beat on him, and he's going to drop him, at the line of scrimmage. And, Mason's just able to put on the speed and get to the edge, and the guy doesn't even get a hand on him, and he's up the field 15 yards before he gets touched. So that's the whole deal there. I mean, he's just explosive. And yesterday there was a run similar, it was late in practice when they were doing that move period where I think they just had to convert a first down was what they were looking to do. They ran a play off the right side. It was blocked up really well. There was a pretty good sized hole, and he just exploded through it. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table once they put pads on. It's going to be a really interesting battle for the last spot on the roster in the running back room. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we're talking about rookies, but Jeff Wilson Jr. had a really nice run like that yesterday as well. It was early in team drills. The right side of the offensive line got a nice push, and he was able to get a few yards upfield before there was anybody even in his face, and then it just exploded through the holes. So.
All right. Well, I mean, that's again, not seeing Ty Davis Price and then seeing the undrafted guy. It's like, oh man, that's all right.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is that's why I think why you haven't heard a whole lot about you kind of said you haven't heard about some of the rookies. Well, Ty Davis Price hasn't been on the field, so there hasn't been anything for us to talk about. And Drake Jackson's been on the field, but he hasn't done anything, over the top for us to even be mentioning. Yesterday I put him in my article, partly because of, I put him in there on Tuesday, as struggling. And then yesterday he had a couple of nice pass rushes. And so I noted that. I want to make sure I gave him equal opportunity. It's one of those things you want to write with the positive, and you also, if the guy's negative, you got to write the negative. And that's what I made sure I did that.
Yeah, you got to. All right. Here's another one. Saw him early, got a little banged up, had his hamstring thing going on. Danny Gray, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Gray was the star of rookie minicamp. He was making, all the throws deep across the middle, short, didn't matter where it was. He was making pitches. And then they came back in the first week with all the veterans, and he got one target. It was an overthrow. He wasn't really all that open. And then he hurt his hamstring before we got there for the second week, and so we haven't seen him either. So both he and TDP are guys who we saw very little of, and so we're not quite sure exactly what to expect.
All right, fair enough. Here's one we've heard at least I've heard even a couple good things coming out of camp about him. Spencer Burford. What are your thoughts about him?
I really like Burford. He's the one that stood out. He stood out to me during rookie minicamp, just how strong his hands are. I know a lot of people have talked about that. That was even in his pre-draft scouting report. But you could see it, you could hear it, right? When he'd strike the guy, you could hear it. You could see how quick he was off the ball. And then once the veterans showed up, it's not like he fell behind everybody, and he just he still looks the part and looks like he's going to be able to fit in there. Last week during OTAs, he got matched up with Eric Armstead on a play where he was in at right guard, and it was a pass play 1-on-1, and he did a good job. Didn't give too much ground, and the quarterback was able to get the ball off. And that's against one of the better defensive linemen the 49ers have to throw at you. Well, I know it's just one play, but that was a big positive, I thought.
Yeah, well, one of the questions I have is, you said the offensive linemen were kind of moving all over the place. Did he play tackle at all, and how did he look in that spot?
He played tackle a little bit. Primarily, he started off at left guard, but then he played a little bit of right tackle. But mostly he was in at guard. I think they're. If I was looking at it, I think they're going to try to force him in at guard a little bit to see if for competition, and have him maybe be a bit of a swing tackle with Justin School and Colton McKivitz. Okay,
all right. Well, that's good because the first four. I mean, he didn't start out so hot. I'll just say that, right? Based off of what you're telling me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That being said, my favorite draft pick this year, because I thought going into this that he could be the starting nickel corner. I believe you thought some of the same things. The question was, did the 49ers see him as a nickel corner, or did they see him as an outside guy? But Samuel Womack, what are your thoughts about him?
Yeah, that's funny. He can't be your favorite guy because he's my favorite guy. So I don't know how he can be your favorite guy. He's
a favorite of the show. Can we do that?
There you go. He's a favorite of the show. He's a Hammer and Nayls Show favorite. number 26, took over for Josh Norman, took his number away from him and everything.
Yeah, good. Thank God.
No, no, he played primarily out in the, he's outside during rookie minicamp and week 1 of OTAs. That's pretty much where he was. He did come inside and run a play or two out of the slot that week. But then the last 3 practices that we've seen, he's been almost exclusively lined up inside. And there's nothing to not everything about him. When it comes to covering, especially if you're asking him to cover man to man from the slot, I'm with you all day long. I think he can handle that. He's strong with his hands, and he's quick enough to be able to catch up to guys if he gets beat a little bit. There was a good example of that on Tuesday's practice where he got beat off the line. He was able to kind of get his hand on the guy, get up behind him, and then as soon as the receiver went to cut inside, he just was able to undercut him. So if the ball had gone there, he would have been in perfect position to take the ball away. That happened to be the deep ball that Ayuk caught along the right sideline from Nate Sudfeld. That's where the ball went instead. But just watching him and watching that matchup, it was a really nice rep. And the only thing that I will say about him, or there's 2 things that worry me. I don't think he's quite comfortable yet playing in the slot when it comes to playing zone. I don't think he's feeling it quite as much. As an outside guy, it's a little bit easier because you have a defender behind you in the sideline. And so you're able to kind of just focus on one area of the field, and now he's got to focus left and right. So I think he needs to improve that a little bit, because there was one time in particular where he just didn't squeeze it enough. He just kind of drifted a little bit too much. He didn't really feel what was coming, and he just drifted a little bit too much to his left, and the receiver was able to get underneath him and stuff like that. So that's one concern I have. And the other one is that guy that's playing in the nickel position for the 49ers needs to be able to be like a linebacker when it comes to the run game. And I'm not sure if he's got the size to stand up and just fill that hole like you need to as a third quasi linebacker.
Okay, that's totally fair. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. That battle at nickel corner is going to be pretty interesting. When he was drafted, obviously, I'm from Oregon, so I'm an Oregon Duck fan. Definitely liked the Lenore pick last year just because, I've seen him play and he was a local kid. But that being said, as soon as Womack was picked, I'm like, well, there goes Lenore. He's off the team. His athletic profile was so much better, and I think he could be really good there. But to your point, it's going to take some time. He played a lot on the outside in college, and maybe that's a little bit more of his natural position. So trying to work him inside, but it sounds like there's going to be a real battle there. Who knows who's going to win that job? So.
Yeah, I think it's going to really come down to him and Darqueze Dennard. I think that's who the competition is to be the starter. Dante Johnson played a little bit in there yesterday. He's moved Dante Johnson can play every position in the secondary, and so they've moved him. They've moved him around throughout the different practices, different spots. He played a little bit in there yesterday. I think the 3rd, 4th teams. But I think it's going to come down to Dennard and Womack. I think Dennard might get the nod because of his ability against the run and zone. But like I said, Womack's, I would, from a coverage standpoint, if you want to throw somebody out there and tell them that you're going to play man coverage on Brandon Ayuk all day long during training camp, which would then translate to, say, Cooper Kupp in the regular season, I'd be okay with it. If you're wanting to chase him around. He's going to get beat at times. Obviously, everybody does by a receiver of that type. But I think he'd hold up well.
Well, and I do expect that they're going to play a lot of man, right? So the fact that seems to be his strength is good, because I think that's where they're trying to kind of lean towards anyways.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. We got 3 drafted players left. We got Nick Zakelj, offensive lineman. What are your thoughts about him?
Zakelj's, he's transitioning from tackle. He's going to be inside. I know there was some talk about him potentially being in at center as well. We haven't seen any of that so far. He's been primary just playing guard on the side opposite of Burford. He's solid. He's got good footwork, good hand placement. He's strong. He has kind of a nasty streak in him, which we don't really get to see it all right now. It shows up a little bit because he's aggressive and getting after guys. And he's been playing, exclusively with that second group. So that's a positive as well. I think when you look at the way that these guys are set up right now, the first line, the team that was run with the first group, that's your top 8 guys, I think, right now, right? Because you had McKivitz and Moore and School, along with the 2 guys that are expected to be starters. So you take them plus the 3 guys that are sitting out. There's your top 8, I think. So that shows you who's got to get beat out.
Okay.
I think Zakelj has a really good Zakelj, excuse me, has a really good chance of making the roster. I don't think they want to let him try to slide through into the practice squad.
Okay. And then you probably didn't say anything about Kalia Davis, did you?
No,
Is he still hurt?
No, he's hurt. He was walking around. I saw him in his. He was walking with Deebo Samuel and Javon Kinlaw before early in practice on Tuesday. Shoot, I was walking over to get to the side where the quarterbacks were. I almost got run over by Deebo Samuel, but yeah, no. So they were out there together, but he hasn't practiced at all. He's the guy that I expect to be on the PUP list. Probably a lot of this season, if not the whole year.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I mean, you're stashing them. Okay, and then the last one, I think a lot of people were excited about this too. I mean, speaking of cornerbacks that kind of fit the athletic profile that we're looking for, Tariq Castro-Fields, what are your thoughts about him?
No, you said it. He has the athletic profile of what you're looking for in a corner in the NFL. He's got all of it. The only thing with him is that he just doesn't make very many plays. What I mean by doesn't make many plays is he's not forcing turnovers. He's only had 3 of them during his time at Penn State. With the 49ers, he didn't really see the ball go his way a whole lot. He should have had an interception during the rookie minicamp. We had a ball come his way that I thought he should have either picked it off or had a pass breakup, and he wasn't able to do either of those. But he's going to be in the mix. I think he's going to be fighting with a guy like Diamondre Lenoir for a spot on the roster.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Brian Colb's asked this question a couple of times, so I'm going to throw it out there.
All right.
Tabor Pepper, how does he look?
No, this is a really good question. I know it kind of comes across as a joke, but hey, look at Brian also has a little $sign thing, which means he's a member. He's a member of the Toolbox, Jesse.
Yes, sir. I
set up the membership for the YouTube channel the other day. But
well, I like it. I like the play on words too. Hammer, Toolbox. I got it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. It took me a second to get that one, but I got it.
Yeah. But no, I know it's whatever, but I was watching that because it's just interesting, right? We interviewed him last year before training camp. And I just was, because they bring out like the field goal unit in the middle of team. So I decided to really pay attention to it over the last 2 days. And I got to say, it's pretty damn impressive when the center snaps the ball, and every time that the guy that's holding the ball catches it, all he has to do is put it down, and there's no spinning of the ball. It's in perfect placement, catches it, puts it down, and the ball goes away. That's pretty impressive. And I know that, we joke about it because he's the long snapper, but to be able to snap that ball and have it hit that guy perfectly like that, that's really talent. That's a lot of talent. I mean, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is actually a lot of talent. And I remember we got to interview Tabor Pepper around a year ago this time. Super funny guy. I had a blast. I mean, he was a joke artist. He really enjoyed it. He had a lot of fun with it. And I just think as a person, he just came across really, really good.
Yeah, I think it works perfect, right? Those guys that are in that role, the kickers and the punters and the long snappers, those guys, they got a lot of time on their hands at practice, and so you got to make the best of it. They probably have some good jokes too.
Yeah, of course, I'm sure. Well, it's funny because he was sharing some stories about him and Robbie Gould, and it does. It seems like those two are kind of like the pranksters of the team. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Did we had one more topic? Yeah, or do you want to get into some of the undrafted guys?
Well, real quick, I mean, you forgot about. I understand that he's irrelevant to a lot of people, but you forgot about.
Purdy. Yes, you're right. Brock Purdy. You're right. God, I don't know how I forgot about Brock Purdy. It's Purdy season, and I was so excited that they freaking drafted the kid, and I just glossed right over him as if he wasn't drafted. He almost became Mr. Irrelevant on the show, but truth be told, I don't have to ask about Brock Purdy because we already know Brock Purdy is like, he could be a starter for most teams in the NFL. Let's not kid ourselves.
Brock Purdy is the new Jimmy Garoppolo. No, I mean he was 16 of 25 and a couple touchdowns and a pick. Didn't really get to throw much because that's just kind of the way you are as the number 3 guy. But I think he's solid for the 49ers. If they don't decide that they're going to keep Nate Sudfeld as the backup quarterback long term, I think they have a guy in Brock Purdy who could be a solid number 2 for him if necessary. And if Sudfeld really steps up, I think they have they could have their quarterback room locked down for the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, and it's funny because it is like half joking, right, with the Purdy thing. But I genuinely did. I've got text messages going back to last year's draft before he decided to stay back, and he was a guy that I looked at and said, man, if 49ers should get him like round 4-ish. This was before I thought that they were going to go all in on quarterback. This is when they were at 12 and early on in the process, and then he ended up staying in school for one more year. But I was like, I like Brock Purdy. I really do. And I think that he could, there's something there, not necessarily a starter, but just a long-term backup for you. And the fact that he ended up on the team, I was actually really excited about that pick because it is interesting. He did regress a little bit in college throughout the years, but when you just look at the overall skill set, he's mobile. He's actually got a decent arm for his size. And he's got I don't know. There's something about Brock Purdy that I do genuinely like. And I think that he could be the long-term backup for this team. And I think that's kind of understated when you look at teams. A lot of teams every year they're searching for a backup quarterback, but if he's a guy that you can trust and have for the next 10, 12 years behind Trey Lance, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I think I figured you out, Jesse. I think you like the underdogs. You don't necessarily want to say that, but you like the underdogs. That's why you like Brock Purdy so much.
Hey, maybe that's exactly what it is for sure.
Well, because that's what he is, right? Everybody, whatever. People question his arm strength and what have you, but he can make if he throws it on time, he can make all of the throws, right? Kind of what we were talking about, like with Mac Jones last year. If he gets the ball, Mac Jones can make it work because he gets the ball out on time, at a high rate. Brock Purdy isn't at that level, but he can make the throws when he does. Yesterday, he showed it with he had to throw to the left side on a deep out route that was just a perfect ball. It was really nice, the timing of it, and it was in a perfect spot. And then the last play of practice, he showed off his athleticism, play action to the left, booted out around, made Charles, was able to outrace Charles Omenihu to the edge, and then on the run without slowing down, just put the ball right on the money to the wide receiver for a nice gain. And it was so good that it was so Purdy that they ended practice on that one.
But legit, I mean, he really is mobile. He can move and he can certainly throw the ball. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know that, I get the laughing at it because it was when I said because it was pretty, but it was a really nice play. It was a really nice play. And it was the same exact play that they ran with Nate Sudfeld. I think it was pretty close to the same exact play. It looked like it from my eyes that they ran with Nate Sudfeld, and the same guy was open with Sudfeld, except for instead of just letting it rip, he just short armed it, and Oren Burks was right there for the pick. That's right, East Bay Chris. Oren Burks, your man, came up with the pick yesterday.
Hey, there you go. Oh my God. This is the gift that's going to keep on giving, though. Just so you know, you've got 2 dads on the show, dad jokes galore, just teed up with that last name. Oh my God.
I haven't brought my dad
there it is.
Yeah. It says right there, it says the official member of the Dad Joke Society. So there you go.
Makes total sense. It's all adding up now, Jack.
Yeah, no, my kids hate it, but at least you like it. So that's why I come on here.
Well, I'm a dad, so there you go. I mean, it's obvious I like these jokes.
Yeah, you get it. No, so I think, that's it. And then as far as, I think the other question that you had for me is you wanted to know, you were wondering if there was a player that I knew, maybe I wish I knew more about after these sessions were over with.
Yeah.
And really, I think we go back to what we talked about earlier, some of the drafted rookies. I wish I knew more about Danny Gray because, like I said, he was very impressive during the rookie minicamp. He only had the one target on week 1 of OTAs that we were able to see. And we haven't seen him at all since then. So I don't know exactly where he is. And I want to see him working against NFL DBs more than I want to see him beating the other rookies.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think it's unfortunate. I mean, for all these rookies that are missing time, it's like, man, this is your first off season. Like, this is your time to get out there and really learn and develop and grow. And every practice is important early on at, these early stages. So missing any time is gonna push these guys down the depth chart a little bit potentially. So, it is what it is. I'm sure they'll be fine, but it's one of those things that's a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's, you can question how important it is for a guy like, say, not Frank Gore. He's retired now. So of course it's
not very important.
Yeah, it's not important to him. But, like Fred Warner, that's what I was trying to say, right? I got my FRs mixed up there. But Fred Warner or even Trent Williams, who missed everything until just these last couple of practices, right? Those guys, Trent Williams came out yesterday. I was watching him yesterday, and you watch him compared to everybody else, and it's understandable why everybody loves him so much. His feet are so good and his hands are so good. But those guys like Danny Gray and Davis Price, they need as many reps as they can, and I think it does set them back a little bit in to have missed those reps during this portion, because now they go into training camp and they're behind a little bit everybody else on the team, and we saw how that affected Aaron Banks last year when he got injured early on, missed 2 weeks of the last 2.5, 3 weeks of training camp. By the time he got back, he was just playing catch up. It took him halfway through the season to catch up to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say the other thing too that just kind of came to my mind is no injuries this time around. Last year there was 2 season-ending injuries very close together in these same practices. So the fact that that didn't happen this time around, nothing real significant. I mean, some minor things. Talked about Danny Gray and a couple other guys, but for the most part, no significant injuries. And that's always a good thing as well, to come out of these practices with that, because this is a lot of times this is when it happens, because guys are in shape and not necessarily ready for the physicality of football, even if it's without pads. And so happy to hear that there is nothing of major significance there.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the best news of everything that happened during OTAs. As good as it was to see the quarterback, Trey Lance do what he did, and see all these guys, stepping up and be able to see them out there. The best news that came out of it is that the 49ers go. I don't expect to see them come back next week for week 3 of OTAs, but just to see them go off into the offseason without any injuries like they've dealt with, it seems like every year since Kyle Shanahan's been here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then Niner by Nature asked, will Khalil Davis sit out the year? I think that's the plan. I think they have so many guys on that interior that this is going to be, John Lynch has already said they're going to give him all the time necessary for him to be healthy and ready to go. And I fully expect that to be the case. I would be surprised if we see him on the field, especially over the first half of the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Real quick, I know you've got another show that you've got to run to, but before we do that, I want to say, I mentioned it earlier, I do have the memberships thing on my channel now, so go check that out if you haven't done that already. But get over to Jesse's channel. What do you got coming up, Jesse?
Yeah, so tap in over at Last Second Sports. The schedule's been really off the last couple of weeks. I've been pretty consistent with 1 or 2 shows, but it's just been all over the place. Usually I go later at nights. Well, that's when Golden State's been playing. I certainly don't want to, take anybody away from that, and most likely they're going to take away from me. So I've just kept trying to stay clear of it a little bit, but nothing set for the rest of the week other than right after this, I'm going to do my weekly show with Grant that was pushed from yesterday. And then next week, I expect to be fully back at it as the finals is starting to wind down and whatnot. So yeah, check me out over at Last Second Sports. And then if you're not done talking 49ers or listening to people talk 49ers, tune in over at Grant's show. We'll be live there in about 6 minutes.
Awesome. Always appreciate you coming on. Real quick, everybody, all of you guys, you were great in the comment section. I know you liked my cup, and hope you liked all the information we gave you today. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Hit the little bell notification so you know when we go live. Get yourself over to Jesse's channel. He already has a bunch of people. He's way ahead of me on the subscriber count, but make sure you get over there. Show him some love. He's good at what he does. And other than that, everybody have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll be back with you soon. Take care.